All right, so, you've given us a real humdinger this time with this Megalopolis review. The Spanish critic did not hold back.
Yeah, I mean, what's really striking right off the bat is we're not talking about just any director here, right?
Hmm.
This is Coppola, Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah. Godfather. Apocalypse Now.
Exactly. I mean, the guy practically wrote the book on filmmaking.
So when he comes out and says, like, this is it, Megalopolis, this is my magnum opus, my life's work, been dreaming of it for decades, and then dumps a ton of his own money into it.
Yeah, you kind of have to sit up and pay attention. The stakes are a little higher.
Oh, absolutely. And it makes this critic's take even juicier because they're not just, like, dismissing it out of hand. They clearly see the passion, the ambition.
But they also don't let Coppola off the hook for the film's, shall we say, shortcomings.
And shortcomings might be putting it lightly. Like, they use the word incoherent about a dozen times, especially when they're talking about the editing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they give this one example, I think it was Adam Driver's character, giving some big monologue about, like, urban planning, right? And they cut mid-sentence to this whole gladiatorial combat scene.
Oh, wow.
And the critic is like, this isn't just jarring, it makes the whole movie impossible to follow.
Which, I mean, if you think about Coppola's other films, the way he structures narrative, it's almost uncharacteristic, isn't it?
Totally. And it kind of feeds into this analogy the critic uses later on. They say watching Megalopolis is like, and I quote, being handed a box of puzzle pieces, but instead of a picture, you just get more pieces.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. Like you can see all the individual elements are there. The visuals are supposed to be amazing. Big philosophical themes, references to Roman history everywhere.
But they just don't cohere into something satisfying.
Exactly. And they even say the characters kind of suffer from this too. Like you've got Cicero, Caesar, Catiline, all these huge figures from Roman history. But in the film, they feel more like cardboard cutouts.
Yeah, there's that missed potential, right? Like you can see how those figures could be fascinating on screen, but
Totally. And it's a shame because even the critic seems genuinely intrigued by the premise, like rebuilding a modern American city, but with ancient Roman social structures. They call it daring, even audacious.
yeah, I mean, there's so much you could unpack with that idea, right? Like power dynamics, ambition versus tradition, how those historical echoes play out in a modern context.
Absolutely. But then the critic is like,
Yet.
but the execution just isn't there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because for all the criticism, they don't seem to completely write the film off either.
Right. They dedicate a huge chunk of the review to gushing about the visuals, right? Like calling it a visual feast and stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, when you've got a critic who clearly knows film, knows Coppola's work, saying things like that,
Mm.
it makes you wonder if maybe there's more to unpack here, right?
For sure. And there's this one detail they mentioned that really stuck with me too. Like they described this futuristic Colosseum.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Yeah.
Like holograms and gladiators.
Yes. But like crumbling Roman architecture all around it. And they said the way Coppola blends those aesthetics, like the ancient and the hyper modern, is just mind blowing.
So you've got these really intriguing contradictions at play already, right? Even just from a visual standpoint.
It's like he's trying to make that clash, that tension, like literally visible on screen.
Right. And this is where that whole idea of Megalopolis being more of an experience than, a traditional three-act story, it starts to make more sense.
Okay, I'm with you.
Like, even though the critic is pointing out these narrative flaws, they're also clearly knocked out by the film, like viscerally. The way it looks, the ideas it's playing with.
So it's like intellectually stimulating, but maybe not emotionally gripping.
Yeah, or maybe it's more like, remember that analogy about the puzzle pieces?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, imagine you're wandering through like the world's most incredible museum, right? Amazing artifacts everywhere you look, but there's no labels, no chronology.
Okay, I kind of see where you're going with this. So stunning to look at, but hard to make sense of.
Exactly. And this critic seems to be saying that's Megalopolis in a nutshell.
Okay, so we've got like visual masterpiece, maybe a little messy narratively.
Yeah.
What about the actual acting, though? Did they have anything to say about the performances?
It's funny you should mention that. They actually call out one performance in particular.
Oh, yeah. Who?
Shia LaBeouf.
Oh, interesting. He's playing.
Claudio, I think it was.
Right, right. And
Well, the critic uses words like extravagant,
yeah.
even over the top at times. Like his performance sticks out, but not necessarily in a good way.
So not subtle then.
Not even a little bit. And they make this point that, like, even when Coppola is going for these quieter, more nuanced moments in the film, LaBeouf's performance kind of yanks you out of it.
Huh. So it's like Coppola wants to blend the ancient and the modern, but then LaBouffe over there doing Shakespeare in space?
Something like that. And it speaks to this bigger issue the critic raises about the film's unevenness overall. Like, for every moment of visual poetry or thematic depth, there's this other moment where it just goes too
It's
big.
those puzzle pieces again, isn't it?
Exactly. Like, you can have the most beautiful, intricate pieces in the world, but if they don't fit together.
The picture falls apart.
And I think for this critic, that's ultimately what holds Megalopolis back. For all the spectacle, all the big swings,
Yeah.
the vision just isn't cohesive.
It's like they built this house, right? But every room is a completely different style. You walk in and it's like, whoa, Gothic cathedral, but then the kitchen's all minimalist, Bauhaus.
And the bathroom.
Yeah.
Victorian steampunk.
And you're just left thinking, what is happening here?
Right. It's just overwhelming and not in a good way. And, what's a shame is that the critic does highlight some genuinely good performances, too. Like Giancarlo Esposito as Cicero. Apparently, he's fantastic.
Oh, I can see him totally crushing that role.
And Aubrey Plaza's in it, too. Plays some kind of, rebellious architect.
No.
Critic says she brings a lot of depth to the role, even with limited screen time.
Okay, now those are two actors I'd watch in anything.
Right. But even their performances, according to this critic, can't quite rescue the film from itself.
So where does that leave us then? Like, if someone's listening to this thinking about whether they should see Megalopolis, what's the takeaway? So where does that leave us then? Like, if someone's listening to this thinking about whether they should see Megalopolis, what's the takeaway?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, I think this critic would say it depends
On
what you're looking for in a film, Like, if you're going in expecting a tight plot, a clear beginning, middle, and end,
Yeah.
you're probably going to leave disappointed.
Which, I mean, it is Coppola, right? He's
Yeah.
never been one to shy away from messing with the audience's expectations a little.
Right. This is the guy who made Apocalypse Now.
Mm-hmm.
That film was practically a fever dream.
But also brilliant.
Exactly. And I think this critic is sensing some of those same impulses at play in Megalopolis. Like, they even say that it's best to approach this film not as a traditional narrative, but more as an experience.
Okay, what does that even mean? A cinematic experience.
Yeah, like, you're not just passively watching the story unfold. You're actively grappling with it. The imagery, the ideas, even the flaws. They're all part of the point.
So it's like not necessarily about enjoying the film in the traditional sense, but more about wrestling with it.
Exactly. Like, you'll finish watching it, and you might not be able to say if you liked it or not, but you won't be able to stop thinking about it either.
Huh. Almost like a piece of, really challenging art.
They actually make that comparison. They say watching Megalopolis is kind of like looking at a piece of abstract art, Like, it's open to interpretation. It challenges you to find meaning in the chaos.
Okay, I kind of see it. So bottom line, is this critic recommending Megalopolis or not?
I think ultimately they are. And the reason they give is because it's so different, so ambitious, even if it doesn't totally work.
They say something like, in a world of cookie-cutter blockbusters, we need more films that are willing to take risks even if they stumble.
Right. It's like you can appreciate a swing for the fences, even if it's a swing and a miss.
That's a good way to put it. So, there you have it, folks. Megalopolis. Visual feast or five-car pileup. Profound statement on the nature of power or just plain messy.
A cinematic experience unlike anything else out there.
Exactly. It sounds like it's up to each individual viewer to decide. Would you rather watch a predictable good movie or take a chance on something truly unique?
Something that might just blow your mind.
That's Megalopolis for you. All right, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all the sources we discussed. And as always, thanks for listening.